Good morning and very warm welcome to you to our 8th COG Extra. I'm Tabitha Goldstorp, co-founder of CogX, and it's a delight to be welcoming you from wherever you are in the world today. Scientific tech brilliance has been emerging from across the globe over the last few decades, and we know that ourselves because over the years we've insanely brilliant individuals join us on these very stages, physically and now virtually, from research labs, university campuses, startup communities, all coming in to explain how they use unique technologies to solve some of the most intractable problems. Today, we celebrate some of these exciting developments and brave individuals in tech doing this. Looking at how the most sophisticated edge technology is being used to affect our landscape positively. We'll be hearing from a host of brilliant researchers, founders, technologists, and organizations contributing to the discussion, which include the renowned Chief Information Officer at Vast, Jaya Balu, Claire Janish, founder of Biomimicry South Africa, and the Genius Lab, and Yodit Stanton, the founder and CEO of Innovate UK company OpenSensors. As part of our report from the cutting edge, we'll be teaming up with 2 brilliant organizations for today, both from the United States, XPRIZE and Biomimicry Institute. In addition to these live sessions, you'll be able to join in. We have a Global Leadership Network session at 11 o'clock. For those of you who are members, Tina Wood's book launch, Living Healthier, Longer and Living Better, the Cutting Edge Solutions for Systemic Change, hosted by Collider Health. It'll be moderated by our friend Robbie Stamp, CEO of Bias International. In addition to the side events, don't forget to check out the expo. Drop a line to some of the brilliant organizations featuring in it. Lastly, we encourage you to talk amongst yourselves, use the networking functions, reach out to someone new and connect. We're building as many features as possible to make it easier for you to do business. So let us know what you think. But most importantly, we want to get on to our first session. Kicking us off, I'm delighted to launch our new format in our series where I'll be interviewing startup founders and finding out how our community and you as listeners can help them. Our first founder is Yodit Stanton, the CEO and founder of OpenSensors, an enormously exciting company. Yodit, come on in. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you're here. So what I want to do is start by asking you a little bit about where the idea for OpenSensors came from. I have heard it's quite a personal reason, and talk a little bit more about the business and the technology. So take it away.
Yes, so I was, so my background is data and kind of high scale engineering for banks and investment banks. My eldest daughter has asthma, and she did have fairly severe asthma as a young child. And I was getting very, very suspicious that pollution was contributing to her attacks. So I did what all engineers do in these circumstances. I started trying to kind of get some control back, which is essentially putting up air quality sensors around my house, outside my house, and so forth. And obviously IoT, or Internet of Things at the time, this was like 6 years ago, so it was kind of very, very early. It's still fairly early. But yeah, I started connecting it back in through the internet, trying to understand the data and trying to track it, because when your children are ill, you feel quite helpless. So yeah, it was a really productive thing for me to do, to help. But and then I started really trying to understand air quality, the factors, you know, the kind of the nuances, what the different things mean, and I thought it was really super interesting. So that's how it started, and
then you turned it into a fully fledged business with hundreds of clients. How did you make that leap?
Yes, that was
amazing.
I did not set off to start any kind of startup. I will say this. The first client came to us and said, you know, this is really interesting, because I was publishing the data as well, so that other people could access it, and then letting other people kind of start publishing their data. And it was really interesting. It was kind of a community project, and I had a job. I was doing this on the weekend. But the first client started saying, well, this is interesting, because we'll pay you if you provide it for the service for us. You just need to clean it up a bit. And I was like, oh, okay.
Nice.
And yeah, started learning more about real estate, commercial buildings. Commercial buildings are insanely inefficient for many reasons. They're inefficient because I think they're something like the kind of in the US at least 40% of CO2 emissions comes from buildings.
Gosh.
And I really kind of started thinking deeply about how do we make building some efficiencies. Like we have now the ability with the Internet of Things to understand the physical world, just like, you know, traditionally kind of data science has been much more around web data and so forth.
Right.
Now we have this opportunity. Now we can understand the physical world and get that kind of data. And how do we translate that into, you know, making it better? We have a lot of buildings, but we don't, you know, essentially we don't need to build more because we're just using them inefficiently. When the penny dropped, you know, more and more companies started talking to us and so forth.
Yeah.
It kind of the first 2 years was definitely quite organic, I have to say.
That's amazing. That's exactly how a good business should be. I'm incredibly impressed. And tell me, what's the technology you're using? What do your clients get at the end of the onboarding process?
So we focus on again, like I said, commercial buildings. And what I mean, back then, let's say, you know, kind of 6-7 years ago, people were playing around with Raspberry Pis and so forth.
Right.
But what I understood was that actually IoT has to be made easier. So we deal with hardware. We have now, I think, about 30 odd different types of sensors and hardware. We deal with the rollout. So if you've got, you know, if an enterprise is ordering like 1,000 sensors, you need an efficient way of rolling that out. You can't just send it to them, right? And you know, the price of hardware has dropped massively, and it will keep dropping. But what isn't going to drop is kind of the physical, you know, paying people to roll it out, frankly. So we started metrics around less than 30 seconds. It should take less than 30 seconds for each sensor to be deployed and go live. And
amazing.
By non-technical people. So it should not be somebody kind of configuring anything. So we do that part. And then you know, kind of the output for the client is obviously the insights. Like it is around, you know, how efficiently you're using your buildings in terms of what we call utilization, which is if you've got consistent, I mean, COVID has now changed that, but if you know, consistently, most buildings are utilized by about 30-40%. So this massive real estate in London that people are paying millions of pounds for, but they are not using it efficiently.
Right. So that was 30 or 40% before COVID. So what are people? What is the utilization now of one of your big clients? Obviously, don't tell me the name and the number, but what's the average?
So there are certain clients we have which are kind of essential. So their utilization has probably dropped to about 20%.
So that's sort of key workers, so construction and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And others have just completely shut down their buildings. So it's gone down.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so it's kind of multiple combination. Utilization is one efficiency. Air quality is another inside buildings. Really kind of is the cleaning system, as in the HVAC systems and so on. Are they filtering the air properly? Is it free and so on? So you can, you know, most people can feel it, especially in the afternoons when CO2 kind of spikes, but they don't really know how to measure it. So it's really— Is
that when we rush for our chocolate bars?
Yeah, because CO2 makes you sleepy, right? Like CO2 makes you—
actually clinically proven why we all want Tony's chocolate at 3:00.
Yeah. So you've got all these people, let's say that, you know, utilization it's been a while, all these people are breathing out CO2. If there's not a decent filtration system that's not circulating the stale air out and getting fresh air in, everyone starts getting lethargic and foggy brained. And then you're like, well, then the people can't be productive. Like all these things that you're spending so much money on cannot be function
They're
properly.
literally not breathing. I mean, that's amazing. And does your company, do you offer them the insights and advice on what to do, or do you kind of leave them with the insights and say and their internal teams figure out what to do next?
Yeah, that's been the majority over the last couple of years. Now we're telling them what to do because we have so much data from so many.
That's what I was wondering.
We can now say, well, actually, this is where you stand compared to the average. These are some kind of tangible things we should do about it because, for most people, they're looking for a bit of advice and guidance on what to do next.
And what is your advice during the pandemic? What has been your advice to the companies that are kind of not key workers and not at the kind of fully close the office? So let's say, a company, I'm actually in a co-working space now, Imperial's co-working space, Scale Space, and it's probably, from my eye, it's maybe 20% occupancy. I definitely still get tired at 3:00, but I'm not sure there are enough people for it to be a CO2 problem. What's your advice to a company like this?
So with COVID, there's 3 elements that people really need to be aware of, and actually being aware of it in your home as well as any indoor environment is really important. So one is in terms of the virus strength, as it were. So cold air and dry air is where the virus thrives the most. So the research is that if humidity is under, usually on average, most places it's about 30%, but if you can get it between 40 and 60%, then I think the virus survivability is reduced by something like 70%. So the papers are out there now that show this, and it's really, really interesting. So controlling humidity. So I have humidifiers all over my house.
That's fascinating.
And same with other indoor environments that I go to in terms of having things in our office and so forth. There's just keep them humidity as 60%. That's quite critical.
Yeah.
The second one is thinking about what affects people's immune system so that they're not getting sick.
Right.
So again, low humidity is really bad for you. So I'm not sure if you notice, but if you in the winters when you turn on the heating, the air dries and really kind of and you're more prone to catching colds and so on. But at the same time, particulates or air quality affects people's ability to fight off the virus. So it's kind of of immune system. So clean air is super, super important. So keep pollutions low as much as possible, or upgrade your filtration systems. And the other thing is getting a lot of fresh air in. So CO2 is an indicator of how stale your air is. So keep if you can, open windows, or if it's in a building, get a lot of fresh air.
So fresh, humid air is what we need.
Yes.
Interesting. And I can't help but think that the pandemic has already created more inequality, but also just pointed out the inequality that is already there. And this to me sounds like something that is quite easy for big companies to solve with lots of money, but less easy for schools or doctor surgeries to solve. What can we do? What can OpenSensors and providing data do to try and close at least some of that gap?
I think a good country to look at in this sense is Germany. So Germany put out guidance, open windows for at least 5 minutes. So for a school or doctor surgery or whatever, open windows for at least 5 minutes every hour. Get as much fresh air in. People kind of come and go, or students come and go. So they talk about social distancing and so forth, but really kind of keeping an eye on fresh air.
Yeah.
And they're also, Germany as a country is investing, I think, something like €500 million in upgrading the ventilation systems of their public buildings.
Genius,
On Tuesday next week. So they're giving grants of about 100K per, I guess, office or public building, whichever way you want to look at it, and really upgrading that. And it's a really wicked smart move that they've done. And lots of other countries really need to start looking at this obviously as a private organization or in your house and so forth, just taking those lessons and implementing them.
Yeah.
It does not have to be that expensive.
Yeah, I'm thinking buying a humidifier for myself and for the schools that I know. Interesting. And let's shift gear a little bit. I want to make sure before we lose you to talk a little bit more about specifically your business and what the audience can do to help you. So how big's the team? How much money have you raised? What are the areas where you've had obstacles we can help you overcome? It sounds as if the product is amazing.
Yeah, I think lots of help. But so we've raised a couple of million over the life of the company. I think I've shied away from or at least spending a lot of time on fundraising, just because I look at the stats like everyone else does for somebody like me, and you think, well, I can spend a lot more time with customers and be productive rather than spend a lot of time with kind of on the road fundraising. Now that, this is my take on it.
Own more of the business as well. If you're doing well with customers, that's even more validation. I'm with you.
Yeah, but it's the harder road, and I'd say that. It's hopefully in the long term makes sense. We shall see. History will tell more. I think from a help perspective, get in touch and get us, because we're trying to build a community of people that, especially that are interested in air quality and building utilization, and there's a lot of resources that we're building to help people, because it's so important. COVID especially is one of those things that if we get rid of it, we can all kind of come back to some sort of normality.
Yes.
It cannot be done in patchworks where there's kind of something works one end and so on. So as a society, we need to level up collectively.
Yeah. So can individuals start collecting data and feeding it into your open data model in the same way that they did when you first started the company?
Not so much, because what I found was sensors cost money. Even if you so for most people it's not like software where it's kind of free as in your time investment. I found a lot of the community projects struggle, quite frankly, funding for the hardware. So if you are interested in these things, it's an enabling and help your schools, your local communities make some money for hardware. If you want to know more, I can, please.
I like the idea of a sort of Tom's model. So you buy one shoe and you give another shoe gets given. If the company buys sensors, then you could give them to schools. I mean, that would be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that would be
okay. You heard it here first. Any companies out there who want to implement OpenSensors, you need to also implement it in your local school. Any passing words? Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Boy, yeah. there's I think I will say that the kind of it's been a tough year for most people. So what I do want to say is actually there's some really, really interesting research that is out there, especially around air quality and so on. And I encourage people to not feel so helpless. And for me, I hate it. So, look into some of the new research that's coming out, and let's all start kind of taking a little bit more hands-on approach rather than watching in the sidelines.
That's a really good piece of advice. Feeling some sense of control over what is completely uncontrollable situation, I think will really help all of our mental health. What we'll do at CogX is we'll tweet out some of that research from your website and share that with everybody. Thank you so much, Yodit. That was absolutely awesome. And we'll see you hopefully at CogX again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
So, gosh, I mean, I learned so much just then. I'm definitely going to buy a humidifier and buy one for the local school as well. But I need to connect them to OpenSensors. Anyway, fantastic. And don't forget, in a good 11 minutes, we will be back here with our second brilliant founder, Elizabeth Nyko, the CEO of Modularity Grid. But for now, I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. You can too, and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Bye.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.